Welcome to the TNC Random Fandom Podcast. We are here to have fun and talk all things pop culture, collecting, and nerd culture in general. Make sure you join the conversation during our live stream with our most excellent hosts, Craig Borden and Tommy Mock. Let the shenanigans begin.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of TNC's Random Fandom. I am your host, Craig Borden, with my awesome, excellent, most fun time friend, Tommy Mock. How the hell are you doing, buddy?
I am doing outstanding, Craig. Just so you know that I am the T of the TNC, and he obviously is the C. So yeah, I'm doing great. I'm fantastic. I'm ultra excited about this show with you. It's honestly, it's a dream come true to actually start something like this, and we're both huge, massive geeks, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You can tell that from the shirt you're wearing, Mr. Huckleberry.
Oh yeah.
I caddyshacked it up a little bit tonight. It felt assumed, proper with the fact that it's basically 9 billion squirrels and critters running around my backyard right now trying to literally find nuts for the winter and stuff here in Rochester, New York. Both of our homes, you being a little bit more south of the lake than I am on another lake, but that's besides the point. So, Tommy, you helped me get this going. Obviously, it's been a 50-50 so far, and that's how we intended to be the whole damn time. You kind of got us rolling on the TNC part of the, fun with the name here. You want to give us some of the background on how you stumbled onto that? Because obviously that's some really deep cut there in the TNC part.
That is a very deep cut. So for those that are into, I guess, video gaming back in the, what was it, the NES days, the old Nintendo Entertainment System, there was a game that was called TNC Surf Design, and TNC basically was Town and Country, which was a company that would manufacture surfboards. So they had a video game that had everything from surfing to skateboarding, I believe. And so it almost seemed like that name fell into our laps when we were talking about it. I was like, well, I'm Tommy, he's Craig. That's TNC right there. So, and we were coming up with some, spitballing some ideas of how to get a podcast that actually talks to us as fans. And you had mentioned like collecting and how we got into our collecting. And I wanted to expand on that. You and I both have massive collections of things, much to the chagrin of my wife. And but we, I wanted to expand on that. I wanted to have something that was, as I put it, for fans, by fans, about fans, and cover the gambit from music to movies to books to games to video games. I mean, everything that's out there. And I want to talk to the people that geek out about everything and anything. So I mean, what better way and format but to talk to other geeks like us? We go to toy shows, for Pete's sakes.
Yeah, it's to that point. I think you're pitching the ball right where I can hit a home run with it. So we're already playing off of each other perfectly here. I wanted to make sure that we made it privy to everybody that we were going to be going to toy shows. We're going to go to cons. We're going to get involved in the community as much as we humanly possibly can. This isn't just us sitting here on a soapbox hoping that nobody would ever just, say the wrong Star Wars thing or who shot first or something like that to us and whatever it might be. So in that fashion, we want to get out there and we want to hear your stories. We want to know what you collect. We want to have interesting people on the show. We already have a few people that I've talked to, and I know you've had some friends that you've talked to too. One of my buddies, when he heard that we were doing this, Tommy, all he does is collect minifigs for Star Wars. That's his collection. So that would be something really, really cool to have a Lego minifig guy on, and my buddy Kelly, and then the other guy that does Star Wars Legos all day, every day. That'd be a really fun episode just to talk Star Wars and Legos. Things like that. You mentioned the toy show. I we are going to be at the Village Gate Toy Show, wandering around, interviewing, and at least handing out business cards for future guests here in Rochester, New York on December 1st is when the Village Gate Toy Show is. And if you are in the Rochester area, I do highly believe that that is one of the best toy shows that we have here in Rochester, New York. And it's actually general and free admission. So that also is a nice little bonus.
Yeah.
There's a old school mall. You can't pay admission to get somebody to come in and hope for the best, right? So, but Tommy, that was my passion with, I know how you are with talking to people, and you and I working together for a military contractor for a new being in the service. Thank you very much for your service.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
We're used to talking to people. We're out in front of people all the time. So this wasn't a big stretch for us, was it?
No, not at all. Not in the least. I mean, I've been having fun with just this idea. When you and I started talking, I started bringing it up with everybody from family members to friends, and just trying to pick their brains on things, and I got a pretty great response. So yeah, I'm excited for this, actually.
Yeah. And well, that point, we actually have our first customer. So thank you for whoever happened to tune in on the live show so far. Make sure you hit us up on the comments and just be that person that says first, just so you know you're out there. So anyways, yeah, please. I'm just kidding. So, but Tommy, we talked about what we were going to start off with here and chit chat and goof around with, and how we were going to start the show off tonight. And we talked about just interviewing each other on the things we do have a great passion on and everything. So I'm going to start this one off, and I'm going to just throw this one back at you.
Uh-oh.
Favorite movies? What are your go-tos? You had mentioned to me you're dying on an island and you only have a couple of movies with you, and you had to watch them on death loop. Right. So what are you thinking?
So, okay, now you put me on the spot, so I will have to say this. I preface this with this answer, and I will throw it back at you with this: is every time you say something about a movie or music or everything, somebody goes, "Oh, that's in my top 5," but yet nobody ever really says what their top 5 are. So I would say that top 5 is those are your end all be alls. Okay. So I will answer your question with your 2. Okay. So my number 1 end all be all, which if I was on a desert island and I had a TV that only played this movie on loop for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hands down, Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. I think it is the best out of the original trilogy. It not to sound like Randall, or not Randall, but oh God, I'm blanking, but you know who I'm talking about.
Say, but the gentleman from Clerks that said maybe there's too many freaking Muppets in that.
Yes, but it ends on such a down note. Dante ends on such a down note, but it's a great story. We learned that Luke has a sister and finds out that Vader's his dad, and that's like, oh great, my dad's trying to kill me, but other than that,
not a big deal.
And then I would have to say, and I'm going to say this, it is either the original 1984 Ghostbusters or Tombstone.
Tombstone.
I can watch that movie every time it comes on TV, whether it's regular network TV. I will watch Tombstone and not turn it off, because it just Val Kilmer has the best one-liners, probably one of the best cowboy characters I have seen in a Western ever. And I would challenge anybody else to say something other than Clint Eastwood and Fistful of Dollars or something. But
yeah,
so throwing it like
that ballpark as far as those one-liners. But yeah. So first off, now you had to take a few off of my list right there, because to me, Empire is the best Star Wars movie regardless. And not that I'm not a fan of all the others, just saying, to me, all Star Wars is good Star Wars, because there was that giant depression where we only could read Star Wars stuff between the prequel series and then the originals, and that little bit of age gap that you and I have. I was shown all the Star Wars movies just before the special editions came out. So it was like, okay, great. I got all the originals. I did the who shot first stuff. It was enough, right?
Right.
But my go-to movies outside of Ghostbusters and those ones that you had mentioned, easily, funny enough, my favorite movies tend to lead more toward comedies. I can sit and watch Wayne's World on a death loop all day, every day, and it wouldn't even bother me. I can quote that movie from front to back. There's no weirdness to it or anything like that. I just love that movie. It's kind of like a perfect comedy to me. Another one being Tommy Boy is my other personal favorite comedy. But if I'm going to go for the other action movie kind of ballpark here, you can't go wrong with Raiders of the Lost Ark. I love Indiana Jones. Amazing movies. That one is still, in my opinion, probably the best one. I will say that Last Crusade does rival it a little bit, but there is something to say that, Raiders was just, every action thing you could think of was going on in that. And then I am also a giant James Bond movie nerd. So there's there.
So with that being said, Craig, with you mentioned Indiana Jones in that series and that, what are your thoughts on the Crystal Skull?
Talk about that movie would have been great with two differences. Somebody actually gave a shit with special effects and no Shia LaBeouf. So, and then
we just alienated a bunch of Shia LaBeouf fans.
Yeah, I think he did that to his own fans. But the other fun part, I think, is I honestly, I didn't, and maybe I'm just going to steer this direction to you, and then we can maybe dive into this a little bit with our both of our loves for Star Wars and stuff. What did you think of the last Indiana Jones movie, the fifth one?
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I have not watched it yet. I have not.
And I think that sounds like a good watch party right there.
It was. It will be.
As a person, I went and saw it in the theater, and just because that is my go-to movie. I'll give you the story from the Crystal Skull here in a minute because you'll die laughing from this one. In the midst of watching that movie, it felt like it was the right timing and everything like that. Obviously, Harrison Ford's a ton older. Pick all these reasons. It didn't seem like them trying to force Shia LaBeouf on me as the next Indiana Jones. It felt like he's done. He's hung it up. He's, got everything going in his right direction. And it was I think it got a bum rap. I do. It did unfortunately start out with the best action scene at the beginning of the movie, like a typical James Bond movie, but.
Right.
But I gotta give you this story on the Crystal Skull because I think you'll get a kick out of it. So my dad and I went with the family and everything when that movie came out. Day one, it was in the theater again. About 5 minutes in, they pull him out of the trunk, and Cate Blanchett's Russian character is obviously there, and she's finally starting to tell what's going on. And I leaned over to my dad, and I've never made him laugh harder ever in a million years than I did with this comment. I leaned over to him, I said, "Okay, and later we go catch moose and squirrel." He just died. It was such a Rocky and Bullwinkle moment to me, the way she talked with that accent. I couldn't hold it in. I had to say it. And we were those people in the movie theater in about 2 seconds. So, had to say it. But lay it out to me on the Star Wars front here a little bit, Tommy, because you were as entrenched as everything as anybody as I am or anybody that we know. What are your thoughts on after seeing the whole tenure of everything going on here now?
So again, I will start with saying is I am the original trilogy demographic. I was, and I'm going to date myself, I was 2 years old when A New Hope came out. And so it was a little bit on the, I was on the young side, but I was the perfect age for Empire and for Return of the Jedi. And my fandom was solidified after that. I wanted my hair cut like Luke Skywalker's. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I think that, that character was, everything that I wanted to be. And I would, my mom used to cut my hair and she used to tell other people, tell me he looks like Luke Skywalker. And then, little 5-year-old, 6-year-old Tommy is running around going, "Yay, look at me, I'm Luke Skywalker." But but watching the Star Wars trilogy now, or I should say the Star Wars franchise now, I think that it's got a lot of misses as opposed to hits. I can appreciate the prequels a little bit more now than I can say than I appreciate the sequel trilogy. I'm not a fan. There is only one modern Star Wars movie that I will say they hit it out of the park, and that is Rogue One. I think Rogue One tells a great filler story between the prequels and the original trilogy. That Han Solo standalone movie was crap. I enjoy
I'll
the
say Woody Harrelson played a good character in that, but that's there's a perk in every one of them. It's just not all gloom and doom anyway.
right, but for the most part, I'm always looking for. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I want to believe again. I want the good stories to come out. I was not satisfied. No, that's not the proper term. I was not happy with the way the Acolyte turned out. I, love The Mandalorian. I like that story. But the Book of Boba Fett might as well have been, season 3 of The Mandalorian, because it seemed like there was more side story featuring the Mandalorian than there was really Boba Fett. But that's where I am now. Is I'm always giving Disney the benefit of the doubt, but I think that they're really doing the franchise a disservice by not looking at some of, like what you alluded to, was this expanded universe, these novels that we had in the 90s, the early 90s, where Shadows of the Empire. Those were great stories.
Or the Empire with the actual Thrawn story.
Right.
Those were really good.
100%.
Let me ask you this question, seeing that this has come up in this fashion. Talking about the expanded universe and all this stuff, I'm gonna make a Marvel crossover comparison here. They're doing the exact opposite of what happened back in the day. So Marvel licenses finally are out in the world, right? We finally saw a good Marvel Comics adaptation with Blade, right? It finally happened. There was an awesomeness to it. Not to mention Wesley Snipes. Bam, badass, right? So all the movie licenses started getting or all the comic book licenses started getting bought up by everybody because they found they could finally do something other than Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. So you get them going, but the Marvel movies, they tried to, I blame 21st Century Fox on this one. They tried to take the wonderful characters and the stories that they had, and they just threw them out the window and kept the characters. Tried to make all these movies for the X-Men, Spider-Man, all these comic book movies as their own stories. You ignored all this wonderful, tangible folklore that was sitting there ready for you to actually be able to run with. And I think Star Wars is doing the same thing. And they're not going to get a lot of these people that are in our demographic to love these stories unless they start really pushing some of that stuff. Thoughts?
Well, I'm all for new stories and new characters, and that they're that are part of that universe. Because again, I believe that especially in Star Wars, there are multiple galaxies, if you will, that you can explore, and they all, it's almost kind of like the Star Trek. There's a federation of planets, if you will, and Star Wars, we have the Galactic Senate and all of these other systems out there that have all of these different characters. They probably had Jedis and they probably had Sith, and I'm open to all of those newer stories, but don't do it as a money grab. Don't do it as a get some great writers and let them tell a true Star Wars story. Because I was actually going to ask you about. I was going to ask. That was my question to you, though. It's very similar. Do you think that Disney is doing a great, or is doing these franchises that they own a disservice by, even though the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of is intertwined with each other, so these stories kind of overlap in a way. But do you feel like they, with Star Wars and Marvel and all these other franchises, do you think that they're oversaturating the market, that we're getting a watered down product that is just like, well, it's just enough to where we can sell, overpriced merchandise in the Disney parks, and we can sell overpriced merchandise in Walmart and Target and all of these big box stores? Do you think
I know what you mean on the merchandise thing, Tommy?
well, and then I'll get to that question too, because that is a tie-in to that. But do you think that Disney really is doing the consumer, which is us and kids and just anybody in general, a disservice by churning out a lot of watered down for the content in order to just make money?
Yeah. I don't think it's being done on purpose. I think the biggest problem is they're not focusing on trying to make good stories on those things. They're not trying to make good video games. They're not trying to do this. I've equated what's going on with Disney and in general with movies of late, period, Tommy, to what you and I lived through with another thing that you and I are very fond of, and that is rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
The late 80s, early 90s was a cookie cuttered piece of shit that you only had certain bands that actually stood out. I'm sorry, for every band like Poison, you had about 15 other bands that were exactly the exact look of Poison. And I'm nothing against Poison. They were the one that stood out amongst those 15. But I think that's the problem that you're having right now.
Matter reflect himself and not the show of TC.
There it is. But anyways, but my problem on this whole thing, and I think the Marvel universe is the perfect example of this, because you look at what's going on and how amazing it was leading up to Avengers. They had that when Disney bought them to, put out the first Avengers movie. With everything they had planned and ran with, there was already all the way up to, Infinity War and Endgame planned and done. That was what they bought from Marvel Studios when they absorbed them, right? Now that you've gotten past Endgame, honestly, they all feel like the same damn movie. There's a couple that don't, like the Spider-Man No Way Home one here was great. I liked it. But at the end of the day, it was not too much different than the formula than it was even on hand with a lot of the other ones. All three Ant-Man movies are the same movie. The last couple of Thor movies are basically the same thing. They don't do a very good job of building up their villains to the point, other than Thanos, to be that guy. And right now, if you had Darth Vader's the epitome villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
This generation's Darth Vader is more Thanos than it is Darth Vader. They're not doing a good job of building up anybody past that. And I don't know if they know where to go. And I think they're making that same fumble with Star Wars and all the other licenses. So
right. They and again, and I will go back to, there's so much material in the expanded universe. When it comes to, I mean, even with Marvel, there's so much material out there that you can pull from. I mean, you can literally pick and choose. I mean, it's all low hanging fruit.
And you're just
all of it. Pick from it, right? Yep. I would have loved to have seen even a animated adaptation of Shadows of the Empire, because I loved that game. I wanted to learn about Dash Rendar, and Prince Zizor. I think I pronounced that right.
Yeah, I think you did. And at the end of the day, I grew up playing the Jedi games. So Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, Dark Forces 1 and 2. So I've been dying to see Kyle
Squadron
brought into things like that. And we were so close that it sounded like to getting a Rogue Squadron movie, and it sounds like that's off the table now too. So we're gonna get whatever the hell Skeleton Crew is here from that trailer I watched the other day, but
and Skeleton
look
Crew
horrible.
probably has a good it has an opportunity to be great, but again, it's going to be a kids Star Wars movie, which or a show, and I'm perfectly happy with having a live action kids Star Wars show. But
my problem is it felt very Guardians of the Galaxy to me already, and
I'm
I've seen
sure.
that movie 3 times too. And to that point, I love the characters and I love that, but that was what Marvel Studios used to be. Everybody forgets that Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody knew who the fuck the Guardians of the Galaxy were, to put it bluntly. I'm a big Marvel fan. I'm like, I've heard of them. They've been in a couple of TV shows. Is that one episode dropping just to, push a story forward with something in space? But that movie came out and everybody's like, this is going to be Marvel's first screw up, right? It was never going to be anything other than that. And then it turned into being like this generation's actual Star Wars movie.
Right.
So.
Right.
And then they had 2 good sequels, and it is what it is. But I that watching that trailer for Skeleton Crew, that's where I got the vibes from. Was very, very, very Star Warsy, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of move to it. So I hope it works out for them. I really do, because Star Wars has to get back on play some ways here. And to that point, I think it'll take a lot of these things that you and I are chit-chatting about to get properly right, or just finally man up and do a Knights of the Old Republic movie and get a chance to actually start over from scratch on something.
Right. And I think that they, if they actually look at what hits and what misses, maybe they will start tweaking things, and people, I believe that people will come back in droves, and people will spend the money on the merchandise and everything when they get a product that they want to back. And I love Star Wars, and I will continue to be a Star Wars fan. And I want nothing more but my franchise to flourish, so that when I'm old and gone and dead, there's still Star Wars out there for the younger generation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they got to have something to keep that theme park going, which I hear from somebody. It's been pretty good to go down there and hang out at Galaxy's Edge, but I got to get some cash to figure that one out.
We've been in the past 2 years. We've been, and I built a lightsaber. I bought a lightsaber from there. I'm all for it. So yeah.
Yeah, which to that play, I think they did a good job with that park from afar, but I really think that was a good pick.
Honestly, when I went to Galaxy's Edge, I can honestly say that and I'm not lying, I had a little bit of a tear because I was 8-year-old Tommy all over again. And I was like, this is what my dream as a child. I was going to be in Star Wars, and I was in Star Wars,
and that's what Disney did get right. So there's something there.
1,000,000,000% they got it right with that, because you are immersed in Star Wars, and I talk about it like Peter Griffin. Hey, that's not Star Wars, but or like Ted 2. Hey, why do you guys dress like Star Wars?
Oh, there's a great one too, and not to mention a deep cut there, because Ted 2 wasn't exactly Ted 1.
All right, so
as long as you didn't go a million ways to die in the West on me, I think we're gonna kill the Seth MacFarlane jokes.
So now let me throw a question out to you, and maybe I can't see, because apparently I'm having an issue with my stream, so I can't see if we have any actual viewers.
1 and 1 like, so we're somebody keeps coming in and out, but I think it's been a while going in and out.
We've made it.
We made it.
So my question to you, good friend, is, I can see behind you that you have a lot of different things, and you got a lot of Funko Pops and stuff. And so
Legos are behind the 3D printer around the corner.
So I'm going to ask you, when it comes to your collecting, what makes Craig go?
So it's not see, this is where my collecting's really weird. I know from the wall behind me, it would look like that I'm obsessed with Funko Pops, but that's really just I don't collect Funko Pops for the sake of having a billion Funkos. They take me to a moment, you know what I mean? Like there's a couple back here. I have Ren and Stimpy dressed up as the space invading freaking episode. I got Lloyd Christmas and from Dumb and Dumber there dressed up in the tuxedos. I have all the RockNRoll stuff. I got the No Stairway sign up here with Wayne and Garth and Alice Cooper and everybody. But as far as my fandom goes, I love those things that just take me to a moment, kind of like what you were saying with the Millennium Falcon when you were down at Disney World. I have a shitty day. I come into my office here for now doing this podcast or the baseball podcast or just at work, and I have a million mental breaks anywhere I happen to be looking around this room, whether it's the Transformers that I have above my head here that are literally all the ones from they're modern ones, but they look like the 84 Transformers I grew up with. Then I have some Legos with I think you can kind of see the Daily Bugle towering above me here. That was the one I texted you and showed you the other day.
Yeah.
And then I'm goofing around with the 3D printing. That's what some of these things are here. And actually, I picked this one up today, Tommy, because I just couldn't help it. It's Animal because I'm a drummer.
Oh, nice.
So I couldn't help it. I just saw that for $5 or $10, and I was like, "Yep, that's mine. I'm taking that home with me."
Well, I'll do you one better because you my friend. You, on your 3D printer, made me this guitar pick. And
it's got a place now.
So everybody, if you're watching this later on, Craig made this from his, and it's a guitar pick holder, so you can see the guitar picks. Yeah. So, he made that.
Speaking of beautiful communities, I love the 3D printing community. I really do, because that was somebody just had that file on for free, and I saw it, and I'm like, Tommy will love to have this sitting on top of his amplifier. So, but that when it comes to my fandom and my collecting and everything, Tommy, like I said, it's me getting out of my mental space and taking me to whatever it might happen to be, whether it's a stupid movie line. How to goof around here with the Millennium Falcon that's above my head too. I got all sorts of stuff. Oh well, that and the other one here, I didn't know if you can even see it, but Anna came home with this guy the other day.
Dude,
so
no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Did she put it together, or did you put it together, or was that
she put it together?
Okay.
She's got a Lego obsession at the moment, so I'm letting her run with it. It's keeping her mentally stable, so she can keep goofing around with all the Legos here. I still have the Razor Crest I got to put together up here too, up next to the Daily Bugle. But
which
to that point, like I said, it's just
like the master or the
it's the regular one. I have nowhere enough room in my office here to be able to put any of the UCS ones. As much as I would love to have that giant Millennium Falcon, I think that would take up this entire wall I have here to my right. If I somehow found a way to hang it, would be the other fun part. But I buy the play scale ones. But enough of my collecting. What do you got? Because I see you have tons of Ghostbusters stuff and everything, and I know you do too.
So I do have. So I'm kind of there with you with the idea of I collect things that bring me back to a place, but I'm also kind of one of those weird collectors that if it strikes my fancy, I gotta have it. But it usually revolves around certain things. So like Star Wars, Ghostbusters. Maybe video games that I like I would, back when I actually did gaming, I would collect like the collector's editions of games. So like, like if Resident Evil came out and they had like a special, it came with a figurine or something like that. Or Assassin's Creed, I have an Assassin's Creed where it has a kind of like a statue.
Wasn't that 3 with the Revolutionary War one?
Yep.
Yeah, but thought that's what you had. I couldn't remember.
Yep,
that's cool stuff.
And it was awesome, but I've had to scale a lot of my collecting down to where I'm now collecting like certain characters, or certain, when it comes to Star Wars, like certain spaceships when it's in Lego form and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've had to scale things down because I can get obsessed. And so, like, if you look behind me, I have my Ghostbuster trap, but that trap actually was, and this is one of the topics I want to talk about later on. But that's actually the bottom part of the popcorn bucket, and popcorn buckets seem to be becoming a big thing now. And
including the creepy Wolverine Deadpool one.
Or the creepy Dune one,
right?
I don't necessarily want to stick my hand in that, but but
you're hoping that somebody just stops at their hand.
But I mean, you can see behind me, like I have what I refer to as my Crimson Strike team, which is the Crimson Twins and Baroness and all of the the Crimson painted style Vipers from G.I. Joe. But yeah, I cover the gambit on a lot of different things because you talk about it brings you back to a moment. It takes me back to a childhood when there were parts of that I was really I miss those things. I miss the really good cartoons, the stuff that we don't get to see anymore. It's because it's either deemed inappropriate or it's not educational enough. I mean, I miss the Saturday mornings of sitting in front of the TV with a bowl of cereal and watching X-Men, or those things. But
speaking of fun things, did you ever watch the remake of that? Was something that Disney 100% did right.
Oh yeah, X-Men 97. Yes. Yep. But there are things that also, like, I do collect that do bring me back to a certain time. Like I have the Lego Friends apartment set, and I also have Central Perk. And I'll tell this quick story is when I was young in the Marine Corps and we were on a deployment to Okinawa, we had a common room that had a TV in it, and the Armed Forces Network would take some of the more popular shows from all the major networks, and then they would play them. There is nothing funnier than a bunch of Marines all huddled into a room that's probably the size of my office, and we're all drinking beers and stuff, and we're watching Friends. And it's like, and Friends was like a brand new show then, so it's like we're getting this, so, and I have a love for that show. So, and that's one of those things that if it's on, I'm going to let it go. And it's on like TBS, like all day long from like 9 o'clock to when they start showing reruns of The Big Bang Theory,
It's funny you mentioned like just being around, the gang and hanging out. Some of the movies that really stuck with me and everything was the age group that I am growing up and, really being, in high school and whatnot in the late 90s around the millennium. And was all of the Kevin Smith movies. Like anytime one of his new movies came out, that was the instant go to Blockbuster, get it with the group of friends and watch it. I can't tell you how many times I've watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back just because it's ingrained. It's stuck in here. I could probably go right through it. And those are just some of the stupid things that I'm like, there was a point I was actively looking for something to have on my wall, Tommy, from those movies, and I couldn't find anything. And that's actually funny enough how I stumbled onto the Funkos because Jay and Silent Bob are right there. I got two of them, including the one with Jay freaking looking like thinking he's Wolverine with a bunch of spoons in his fingers. How could I not buy it? It was too funny. So, but no, that's really cool. And I know that you were obviously always big on the G.I. Joe stuff, and then you and I have always shared a giant passion together for all things Ghostbusters and Star Wars. So it's always been fun. That's the reason we're here.
Exactly. And throwing that out there, I think we may have mentioned this, but to our audience, that if they catch this episode later on and everything, we want to hear from you. Please, in the comments, let us know about your fandom, because again, on our socials we have put, we want to hear from you. We want to interview true fans. We want to hear what your fandom is all about, what brought you to that fandom, and when it comes to this podcast, you're the star. We want to talk to you, because there's nothing better in this world than people who are passionate about, even if it's silly things. I want to talk about your Beanie Baby collection from, I want to talk about Cabbage Patch Kids. I want to talk about everything. The only thing that we don't want to talk about is just stupid, decisive things. We're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to, that's not what this show is about. This show is about you as a fan and what you are passionate about. Whether it's horror movies, tell us about horror movies. Tell us what it is about a horror movie that you like, and we will have an entire show just about horror movies. And and if we can't find a thing to talk about, which I doubt that would ever happen, we can have the wheel of random and we'll talk about that.
Got a wheel over here. It's got to change the cards out from baseball stuff from the baseball podcast.
but speaking of which, I thought of a name for our fans. If we have them, we just call them Rando Fandos. But I'm not sure if they would like that.
The community we're shooting at here might have that the community we're shooting at here to build, that might actually be perfectly fine with that situation. So, but to Tommy's point, we're here to be, to help grow the community and goof around and have a good time. We're not here to be goofing around with anything else. We're hoping this gets big enough where we can get this every day, that we can go to shows and wander around and, be with you. That's the whole point. So make sure you hit us up on any of our social media stuff at TC Random Fandom on all social media avenues that we've been able to touch so far. Right, but to that point, message us. We're going to make sure Tommy and I both have our access to the accounts. We'll be putting up video clips and all sorts of fun things. Hopefully it spawns some ideas, because that's what we're wanting to do here. And like I said, just kind of bring the nerddom together. And to that point, maybe we'll all help with some good Star Wars stories or whatever, maybe at some point.
And if you have ideas of upcoming shows or something that you would like us to talk on, whether it be our own experiences or collections or anything like that, or if you want to be on the show, pop in the comments, pop into DMs, and say, hey, I would love to be on your show, and let us know what your fandom is, and we'll probably have you on our show, and
exactly. We're really
we want to have you on. We want to have you on.
Yeah. So don't be shy. Hit us up. So Tommy, did you want to do your top 3 villains and hero stuff before we get into our Halloween fun at the end of the show?
Okay, so
top 3 villains.
Top 3 villains, but I will say this: I do not consider slashers, like in horror movies. I do not consider the bad guys, and there I go. I said I call them a bad guy. I don't call the person doing the murdering in a horror movie as a villain. I think that they are. They do what they do because that's their job.
Yeah, Jason just has a job to come out of the lake and hack people up, right?
Right, but if you think about it, they're in a horror movie per se.
You got that wrong.
Most like slasher movies, there are not. There's not a good versus evil, unless it's like The Exorcist. But when it's a slasher movie, there's no real good versus evil. You got a guy or a person that is their only motivation is to murder teenagers, and then you got teenagers, their only motivation is to, be dumb, have sex, and get murdered, or try to survive.
Like those commercials. Why don't we just get in the moving car?
Exactly. So I am going to exclude horror movies from the the idea of those being villains. So, and I'm sure people will disagree or may agree with me. I don't know. But so top 3, I would start with now that's a good one, because now I just kind of limit. I'm gonna go with the alien, the xenomorph.
That's a good one.
From
There you
number
go.
3. Xenomorph from number 3. And but then again, where do you go? Is it the Colonial Marines that are actually the bad guys, or is it the Xenomorphs? I mean, are they a higher evolution?
I'm gonna go with the one that's literally laying eggs in people as a villain, man.
Let's see.
Good
the
deal.
Second one, I would have to. So number 2, and I'm pretty sure you already know what number 1 is, but number 2,
yeah, probably.
I would have to say Emperor Palpatine.
That's a good one.
Emperor Palpatine, honestly,
baddies.
because he had this. I mean, obviously, he tells us the story of Dark Plagueis the Wise, and then he goes and turns the entire freaking galaxy upside down. But my number 1 would be Darth Vader. But the only thing about Darth Vader is that he did come full circle and became good again, but at the very, very end. But
yes,
you watch that last scene, and it was an added scene of Rogue Squadron that blew my mind. I was like, that is the Darth Vader I wanted to see. I didn't want to see the one coming up off the gurney and doing the Frankenstein walk and going, no, sorry.
No, the hallway scene, and then honestly watching the shadows of that from Luke in the Mandalorian in that second season was pretty badass in the hallway scene. So
yes.
Good stuff. No, that's a heck of a top 3. Just saying. And now I got to pick a top 3 that would have easily had Darth Vader.
All space ones.
Yeah. So I'm gonna. Well, you and I tend to lean more in the sci-fi ballpark, so I'm not shocked by that. So I got 3 that I can be, sake of being different for the different, just to have the conversation here, and it's not me stretching. So number 3, I'm gonna go with the original RockNRoll villain, Alice Cooper.
Oh, you went into a completely different. Wow, you went to a completely different direction with that.
Tell me he's not the villain of RockNRoll, though. Parents literally had their pitchforks and shit out for this gentleman back in the day. So, not to mention, I love Alice Cooper.
I know you do.
So there's number 3.
Okay.
Number 2, I'm going with the Green Goblin from Spider-Man. And could William Dafoe have been a better cast in a movie for the Green Goblin?
William Dafoe didn't even have to have a mask. They could have painted his face green.
Oh, God. Yes. It still brings a shiver to my spine, that speech with him in the mirror in the first Spider-Man movie. He was just so back and forth with it. It was wild. I don't even know if he had to practice and rehearse this. I think he just did it because, like you said, he's that guy already. And William Dafoe nailed that character, because reading the comic books, growing up watching the stuff on Fox Kids in the morning on Saturday mornings with Spider-Man, the Green Goblin was the villain, regardless of all the Spider-Man villains. He was always the one that had the most sadistic level to it, and I've always put him on that same level as somebody I wasn't going to include on this list, but I feel like we have to talk about him, the Joker. He's in that same ballpark with Batman.
So the one thing I like about the character of the Joker is, if you take him for what he is supposed to be, and you get this in different iterations and different comic books, he is nothing more than a cold-blooded, I don't care about anyone in this world. I don't even care about my own safety, so to speak. I just want to watch the world burn, you know, and I will
Right.
take anybody and everybody, you know, with me, you know, and what is it? Is it I think it's called the Death in the Family series.
Is
I
it?
could be
Oh,
wrong.
is this the one where he kills or cripples Barbara Gordon?
Barbara
Killing
Gordon,
Joke.
the Killing Joke. That's it. That's it. And but then there's the one where he actually cuts his face off, you know, and then he staples it back onto him. And I'm just like, that's a man.
Yeah.
That is a man that's not even a man. He is an animal who
Epitome
is
of evil
hyper
at that point.
intelligent and knows exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to do it, and without any regard of his own personal health or safety, because he knows that Batman's coming, and that's what he wants. He wants that. He wants that interaction with Batman. And
He's the challenge at that point.
that's a damn good. That's a damn good one. That's a.
So I wasn't gonna. Like I said, we went off on a tangent. My intent was Alice Cooper, Green Goblin, and the third person I haven't even mentioned yet. But I could have easily put the Joker at 2 and slid the Green Goblin down 1 and not include Alice Cooper. But I had to have a little fun.
No, I liked it. I liked it.
Snakes, guillotines, all that kind of the above, right? So number 1, and this speaks to my fandom in a avenue that we haven't really talked too much on yet, was like I said, I grew up as an 84 Transformers fan all day, every day. And Megatron to me is the villain that I grew up with, that I was afraid to buy the toy as a very young child, those kind of things like that. But there's very few stories outside of what we've talked about on this show here that are such a clear night and day between good and evil than Transformers, between Optimus Prime and Megatron. And Megatron, the way that the folklore has occurred for him over the years to get to where present day Megatron is, it's some batshit level crazy stuff. And I haven't seen Transformers 1 yet, but the prevalence of him building up is that even this is stuff that's been in comic books, is that him and Optimus were closer to being brothers than anything. And, Megatron was a gladiator in the friggin' pits working, and is more or less a, slave labor for the, race that actually, founded and built the Transformers, the Quintessons. And Megatron was the one that rised up and wanted to be a tyrant. It was that simple. And he stepped on anybody and everybody he could to get in his way of that, including his best friend, Optimus Prime. So that getting there is one of those things that's wild. And then if you watch some of those old 84, 85, 86 cartoons, there's some bad plots in there that could have went some other directions. Like he's literally trying to destroy the world level stuff. It's all these same things we were talking about. It could have been some great movies that they haven't gotten that far on yet. And Megatron could have been the center villain in all those movies, and you wouldn't have had to keep changing it over to somebody else. So
what happens when Disney takes over that franchise?
They're about the only franchise out of our youth, outside anything Hasbro owns, is about the only thing that hasn't been swept up and bought by Disney out of our childhood at this point. Your G.I. Joes, my Transformers, a few other things, but that's about it.
I am waiting for a real, truly good G.I. Joe live action movie. I don't need a Channing Tatum. I don't need a Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I just want a true, maybe an origin story of how did G.I. Joe become what they were, and how did they accumulate all of these specialists from different organizations, because you had Marines, you had sailors, you had soldiers, you had airmen, but you also had characters that would come in and from different countries, and that's the kind of story I want. Is what was the need for this, instead of our regular military? What was the need for this conglomerate unit for specific operations? Why couldn't we just use our regular, military assets to take on Cobra? So give me that story. It
would be a good story, and I agree. It doesn't need a Wayne's brother in it to
right.
make it a good movie.
Right, and but that's the thing though, is like the original, some of those, but the beginning Transformer movies, I thought those were fantastic. Those brought me back to my youth when I was, because I had the original Optimus Prime, I had the original Megatron, I had a lot of those original Generation 1 Transformers that I don't have anymore, but
I wish you did.
trust me.
At least for your wallet to trade for other things.
but that's for another story, but that's for another time. So I know that we're approaching our time here. So with that being said, I hope everybody enjoys this episode. And what do you think we should talk about next week? I think we should probably do more of a themed show.
Yeah, I figured we already beat on Star Wars pretty good, so why don't we just figure out with that one? Go through the trilogy and stuff. But anyway, I do want to finish on our note here with the goofing that we were talking about with the Halloween stuff, Tommy, though. So if you got another note, I'd love to hear from you. Before we go with that.
Well, I actually I don't know. What do you got?
So I'll just bring it up here because I have our wonderful chat window that we were talking about earlier, and we just wanted to point out and have some fun with some things that we found on social media. That you sent me this one, I believe, with the kids dressed up as Wayne and Garth and the Murph-mobile. And these kids very well might have won Halloween. Yeah. So,
well, that definitely goes to you. For sure, because you being the
guy that dressed up as Garth once
fanatic. I love that one.
I thought this one was pretty amusing too, that these guys goofed around and had the pretend Jurassic Park moment. Bunch of jackasses on swings and merry-go-rounds dressed up as dinosaurs, and they're like, "Welcome to Jurassic Park." That's just fun. But that's what Halloween is to me. Have a reason to get out, and then because of my shirt, you're dressed up. It's a gopher. Didn't you? I thought you sent me a couple other ones. I got a couple others here that I found that. Well, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't share you.
Okay, that's me and my and Penny. That's well, I said I called it Chewbacca and Penny Baka.
Well played, sir.
She did not know what to think of me at first when I put that onesie on. So yeah.
And then we had the last one here that I think started off our shenanigans period was these two kids dressed up as Harry and Lloyd goofing around in the Mutt Cuts mobile. Not gonna lie, I kind of wish I thought of that one. So
I gotta say, between the two, it's definitely it's a toss up between that one and the Wayne's World.
Yeah,
I gotta go with.
I think the tuxes go over with
Dumb
me.
and Dumber. I gotta go with Dumb and Dumber as the winners, but Wayne's World is definitely a really close second.
Yeah, I think I gotta go with Dumber Dumber on that one too, just because of the fact it's the both that they're in perfect tuxes for it. They're just missing the canes. but
that Power Wheel that they were driving was I mean, that was like somebody did it out. That Power Wheels alone wins Halloween for me.
Outstanding 100%. So really, really cool stuff. But those are the kind of silly things that, Tommy, I always want to make sure I end the show on some dumb little theme thing like that, whether it's ending on almost like ending on a joke kind of like piece with that. Yep. So, but I do think that these kids 100% won Halloween. And so before I get the sign off going here, is there any other pieces you would like to add on, my friend?
No, I think that once we start getting this thing and we start getting our legs underneath us a little bit better, I think we'll start figuring out the best format for us. But I think for a very first episode, I'm even more excited now that we got this one under our belt.
Well, we did have good 10, 12 people come in and out. It seems like I'll get the official some sabermetrics after the show here, but thank you for the 2 people that are on right now. Make sure you do hit those subscribe and like buttons wherever you happen to be listening. I'm sure it's on YouTube right now, because sometimes things aren't letting me on things at the moment. I think Elon Musk and some of the Twitter dumbasses and some of these guys that don't want me to just jump on and start going live, even though I have already another successful podcast and Tommy's got how many followers from his game show fund and everything. So this is just kind of silly that we can only be on YouTube and a couple of things right now. So, but we're going to get there.
We are going to get there.
And we're going to take all of our fans and everybody that love nerds culture just as much as us with us. You're all coming. So everybody,
come along and enjoy the ride.
Exactly. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons wherever you happen to be finding at TC Random Fandom on all social media, and including on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The episode will be live on, actual podcast stuff after we're done here this evening. Make sure you tune in if you happen to miss the live stream, wherever you happen to get your podcasting pleasures from. And I guess that's the end of the shenanigans for tonight, Tommy. So peace out, everybody. Have a nice weekend.
Take it easy.